Hi, this is Mike Sandoval with MUSE, and we are here for a special interview today. We're actually coming home to my high school and Fredo Ortiz's high school, Don Bosco Technical Institute in Rosemead. And I'd like to welcome Fredo Ortiz, and we have some of the band members here today. Hey, Fredo, how's everything going?
What's happening? Good to be back. Should I hold the mic?
No,
Good to be back at, at Bosco Tech. What am I? I'm graduate of 93, material science, and I was in band. I was in jazz band, marching band, and what other bands? Like rally bands, all the basketball,
soccer.
now they have now they have football, right?
Yeah, now they have football. So, give us a little insight about your past, how you got started. When did you start playing drums, and then your transition into Bosco, and then after Bosco?
Well, let's see. Starting from the very beginning, my father was a very musical person. And my grandfather was actually an orchestra leader, and so I think the bloodline of musicianship, flowed onto me. And before I even started playing instruments, I was already appreciating music. I was already listening to salsa. I was listening to jazz, the Beatles, I think Van Halen. So I was already being exposed to even hip hop, and all the radio stations. But by the time I started playing music, I was probably in third grade, and I started on a little drum pad, little Remo drum pad, and this was at Bernie Elementary in Pico Rivera, and ended up joining the concert band. And I think the love for music was already like a natural thing for me. I didn't question it. It didn't take me long to learn things as I went along, and so I picked it up really fast. So every time I entered the band room, I automatically knew what to do. I knew what to play. I mean, just naturally. Of course, by the time I got to high school, I learned all my chops, sight reading, and everything like that. But music was always around me in my family. My dad taught me a little bit of guitar, a little bit of piano. I think when he taught me the guitar, I wanted to take lessons. I started to take lessons. It's probably about 6 or 7, and I noticed the Remo drum pads in the corner. When the teacher, would say, "Okay, practice this music. This is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." So I practice this. I'll be right back. When he'd come back, I'd be on the drum pads playing. I'd put the guitar down, and I'd be on the drum pads. He's like, whoa, wait. You got to get back on the guitar, man. Your mom paid for guitar lessons. And I was like, but I want to play these. These are really cool, man. The drums are cool. And, my mom tried really hard to, have me continue the guitar lessons, but I eventually coerced her to, get me drum lessons. And that's where the love of drums, came in. And I was always playing on pots and pans at home. I think when I was about 8 years old, my uncle bought me a Toys R Us drum set, and it was really small. And the drum heads were actually made of paper, so it only lasted me probably about a week because I played it every day. And so once the drum heads broke, I think my mom was like, "I think we got to get him a real drum set." And I got a Pearl export. And but no cymbals because it was too expensive. There was only enough money to buy the drums, so I pretty much played the snare, toms, kick drum, and I was playing to GNR Lies, and then Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. That's what I started learning to. And after that, the love of music was just apparent and natural, and I think my parents saw that in me and pushed me as far as I wanted to go. Because I was always in sports. I played soccer, football, flag football, but always music was something that I gravitated to. And by the time I got to Bosco, they probably had about 60-piece band. They were Simon Austin was the band teacher then. They were already placing first and second in a lot of marching band competitions. So by the time I came in as a freshman, as many of you guys know, you have to play a cadence and see what chair you're going to be, right? And as a freshman, I beat everybody out except for a junior, Javier Hernandez. And pretty much me and him were like at the same level, but I pissed off a sophomore because he couldn't believe that a freshman beat him out. He's like, I wanted to play snare. And I ended up getting to play snare. So, you know, without me knowing it, I was just going through these levels of, you know, music and learning and soaking it all in. And, you know, jazz band, I was learning how to play jazz here. And everything pretty much that, you know, that rounded me off happened in this band room. Because, and then, I mean, including all my friends who I was around, you know, were listening to different styles of music, whether they were goths, whether they were like into MC Hammer, whether it was, you know, NWA, we were all into music. And of course, you know, you couldn't really show your style here, or maybe you could, you know, but we always had to, you know, wear our nice clothes, so you never knew what anybody listened to. And, but I soaked that all in, and I mean, including marching band, we had some excellent drum teachers where I learned, you know, my sticking and chops, and I think, you know, when I play drum set now, I have a lot of those, you know, techniques that I use now, and everybody's like, why do you play so close to the snare? It was just because that's what they taught me, you know. There was one teacher that would hit your pinky if you put your pinky out, if you played like this. And be like, whoa, what are you doing? He's like, put that pinky in. You don't play like that. So little things like that, and, you know, I learned along the way. But, you know, even outside of the band room, we had, you know, the talent shows. And two of the bands, and some of my best friends that are still friends with me today, came out of, you know, these competitions. The Villains, which was a punk band, and M.U.S.E, both came out of Bosco. And M.U.S.E ended up winning because they were playing ska music and like reggae, and it was nicer to listen to than our punk rock set. So we were wondering, like, we were the best. Punk rock's the best. Why didn't we win? You know, well, because it's easier to listen to M.U.S.E than it was to the Villains. But after we all graduated high school, both of those bands kept working in Los Angeles, playing Hollywood, playing House of Blues, the Whiskey. We were opening up for amazing bands like the Scatolites, Tito Puente, Celia Cruz, War. The Villains ended up opening for Social Distortion, and, you know, with that whole, you know, all those genres of music that I was involved in, my skills were developing, and I was learning how to play Latin. I was learning how to play jazz. I was learning how to play ska and punk, which I wasn't really familiar with those styles of music, but, you know, playing them, you quickly become, you know, you internalize them really fast. And from that, I think that's where I went to the next level to becoming a session musician, where people started hiring me as someone to come in and say, hey, can you play this drum beat for 5 minutes? I'll give you $200. I was like, oh, okay, sure, you know, and I started learning a lot in that field, because through that field I ended up meeting Money Mark, who was my next step to the next level, from coming from high school, playing Hollywood, starting to get recording sessions, to all of a sudden going on tour. And I had never been outside of the country. I graduated in '93. I met Money Mark in '95. So I was going to community college and I was taking music classes.
So it was right after, like literally right after high school, give it a couple year and a half, to you already met Money Mark, and that kind of just even increased your reach out and knowledge, and actually people knowing who you were.
And, you know, I give a lot of credit to the band M.U.S.E because we got involved in the LA scene, and it was mostly Latino, but I mean, it was all styles of music, you know. There was political, there was, you know, people who were experimental, there was, you know, people who were artists, you know. We were involved in a scene that was really important in the early 90s that, you know, developed a lot of bands that came out of LA, like Ozo Motley, you know, and a lot of the bands after that, like Casa de Calacas, and forget some of the other guys. But but definitely was a important part of Los Angeles, and especially the music scene. And I think being exposed to all those bands and people, like we all still know each other, play alongside each other, and it was crazy to see how many people, took it to that next level. And I was lucky enough and grateful enough that I got to be that one person to get it to that level, especially being, a Latino, a Chicano, Mexican American, from Gardena, California, who went to school all the way to Bosco, Rosemead, California. My mom was my bus, and just having that exposure, it really took me to many levels as a person, as a musician, because you start meeting, you get thrown out into the world, and you don't know which direction to go. And I definitely had a lot of people who supported me as well as I supported them, and to be on the level of, traveling the world and meeting, famous musicians that I was used to seeing on MTV, and all of a sudden Dave Grohl's like, "Hey, what's up, Fredo? How's it going, man?" I'm like, "Did he just say my name?" Like, things like that, you never know when stuff like that's going to happen, and so.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So when the whole Beastie Boys, how did that all start out? How did it all begin? Because that was one of the, especially just recently with Adam passing away.
Yeah.
How did all that get started? And
I was playing with my punk band, The Villains. We were playing a coffee shop in Hollywood, West Hollywood on Fairfax, called the Nova Express Cafe. Punk rock gig in a cafe, you just go play a show. We played for free, nobody got paid, and as I was walking out, we played our set, I started tearing down my drums, and I was walking out, and this guy, commented on my t-shirt, and, and looked at him, I was like, "What's this guy talking about?" "Oh, my t-shirt, yeah, it has a big chili pepper on it." And he's like, "What does it say? It's hot to be in Chicago?" But it actually said it's hot to be Chicano. I was wearing all these shirts that my mom would give me, so, and I was like, "No, bro, it says Chicano." He's like, "I know, I'm just messing with you. My wife's Chicana, she's Mexican American, we know what it means." He's like, "I'm half Mexican, I'm half Japanese, but yeah, whatever." I'm like, "Okay, well, excuse me, I'm trying to load out my drums, so can you move out of the way?" And kept on going. I didn't know who he was, didn't recognize him. As soon as he came back in, he kept talking to me, and I was like, "Why does this guy have an interest in me?" And he started talking music, he started talking about his own solo album, and had a show for me to play. But I thought I was going to play drum set. And that's what I really, I wanted to be the Tommy Lee, and that. And he's like, "Hey, so I heard you play congas and timbales and, Latin percussion." I was like, "Yeah, I mess around, but I mostly play kit, I mostly play kit." He's like, "No, well, I got this gig, and, I'd like you to bring your congas." I was like, "Okay." And with the band Yesca, I was getting the experience of learning Afro-Cuban rhythms, Latin jazz rhythms, just all that side of music, which you don't hear regularly. Everything's straight rock, that you hear, and all these rhythms were, from the Caribbean, Africa. You derive from, it has history, and I pretty much said yes, took the gig. It was downtown Los Angeles at this, old loft. And I looked. I didn't know you couldn't look them up. I guess you could look them up, but we weren't into looking up then.
Yeah.
I go, "Who is this guy, Money Mark?" And I finally said, "Well, who do you play for?" Mm-hmm. As a 19-year-old musician, you start learning to network. Mm-hmm. You spread yourself out. You start meeting people. You start saying, hey, let's jam. Let's, get together. Maybe we can make some music together." And immediately he told me, he's like, "Well, I don't jam. I don't do any of that stuff." I'm like, "Well, what are we trying to do here?" I didn't know. I didn't know what he was trying to do. And he said, "Come to this place. We're going to play. Bring your congas. And we're going to play a show." When I got to the show, he's like, "Hey, by the way, I wanted to let you know, I invited a couple of my friends. They play for the Beastie Boys. One's named Ad Rock. The other's named Adam Yauch, MCA." And my jaw dropped. And I went, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Do you play with them?" He's like, "Yeah, I do." I was like, "Can I shake your hand?" Like, I totally became a fan because I was a big Beastie Boys fan. I saw them in 1986. My dad took me. I was probably about 13 years old, and I didn't, get reacquainted with them till 92 when Check Your Head came out. And I missed Paul's Boutique, which was, a highly, talked about album, which had many samples and this and that. But I was so excited. I called all my friends. I was like, dude, you got to get down here. The Beastie Boys are going to be here. Ended up playing my show. Little did I know that was my audition to possibly get a job with the Beastie Boys. And they let me know that night that, hey man, you sounded good. Good to meet you. We're going to call you next week. We got this tour. We're leaving for Australia, and we're also leaving for Eastern Asia. It's the end of our Ill Communication tour. We're going to go out for about a month, and I had never been out of the country myself, other than, maybe TJ and so now that, but that doesn't count,
Exactly.
And maybe Florida. And, and so they saw me that night. They asked me if I wanted to, go on tour, and I accepted. And the one that didn't accept it was my mom. She was like, wait a minute, you're going where? She's like, no, you're in school right now. I was going to El Camino Community College in Torrance, and she's like, you got to finish school, and no, you can't leave. And I'm like, Mom, it's the Beastie Boys, and school will always be there, and and she's like, no. And then my dad, finally, he was like, well, when is he going to get another opportunity like this to travel, see the world, play music, and make a living off of it? And so my mom, finally gave in and said, yes, okay, you can go. And that was, I met them December of 95. We rehearsed. And then at the end of January of 96, got on a plane and flew 18 hours to Melbourne, Australia. Landed. We have techs who set up all our stuff. So all I had to do was walk in, go to the stage, adjust, and then go backstage. Wait for our show. Little did I know that there was going to be 40,000 people out there in a sea of heads, and that's when I pooped a brick, and I was like, oh wow, this is what I just got myself into, and pretty much went on stage and fell right into place. I enjoyed it right away, and it felt natural. It felt like where I needed to be, and to be a part of a band that has influenced so many people over the years, including myself, including me having to go buy Adidas because they wore Adidas, and the whole Ren DMC thing. I was like, oh wow, I'm a part of this family now. And then here I am, and I'm in the headlining group, and I still feel, like, not that I'm nobody, but I'm seeing, I'm seeing the Foo Fighters, I'm seeing Beck. I'm seeing, who else was on there? Rancid was on there. Just all these amazing bands that I was a fan of. And to just be back there and not have any barriers, or excuse me, sir, do you have a pass? It's just like I had the highest pass, and I still didn't realize it. I was just like, wow, this is amazing. But we spent about 2 weeks in Australia. It was a tour. There was about 16 bands. And we just had fun. After the festival was over, we'd go to the hotel and we'd take over the hotel bar. We'd jam. So I got to jam with Dave Grohl and everybody, and it's just like, it was an amazing time and an amazing experience that, I never thought I'd be able to experience. But, through the education of music and, my parents pushing me, I got to this level where it was, you couldn't go any higher, and yes, I was a side musician, but the way the Beastie Boys were, it was always a family, and they accepted me right away, and I always got the call anytime they went out on tour, which was, pretty classy on their part, because they can get, there's probably 100 guys waiting for my job, and I always got that call, and to this day, I mean, years later, and especially, you never know when you're going to lose a loved one. You never know when you're going to, be in that position. And, I don't even know how many years later, but, we lost, Adam Yauch, MCA, due to, cancer. he thought that, he was just sick. He had like a swollen gland or something. And we played our very last show in Nashville at a Bonnaroo festival. And it was after that show that, he's like, well, I got to go to the doctor and get this checked. And once he got it checked, the doctor's like, oh, you got to get this out, But to have spent most of my adult life with them and on the road, it also, along with my parents, it just, carved me out to be a better person in life. And especially, respecting the business that I was in, knowing what I was getting into, especially in a business that, is struggling right now. Record companies are, just falling off the face of the earth. CDs are going to be obsolete. It's all downloading. So the game has changed. To be in a band, it's a struggle. I mean, it's always been a struggle, I mean, from back in the day when there was the Depression, the only the only people that made money were the musicians because they were offering, some kind of alternative to, somebody would just go to the bar and have a drink and, and listen to music, and they were the only people getting paid. So it's like, it's a wonder that, the industry is losing money, but to be a part of that, coming from where I came from, especially coming to a school like this, which, prepared me to be, a better person, and, to this day I always go, oh, I was in material science. I was like, I can probably make cymbals or something, because it's all, metals, you mix metals, and I was like, maybe one day I'll do that, build a foundry in the backyard and start melting some metals and, hammering them out, So definitely, it's helped me so much just to be a part of everything that I have, from this whole timeline of, music.
Very cool. Let's go into now present day. You're working on your new project, the Bongoloids. You got a album that you're almost close to getting ready to produce and to just drop it to the world. How did the whole Bongoloids start, and where are we at right now on the new album coming out, so that we could let everybody know when to go get it and what we're looking for? I know you're starting the Kickstarter. I know you just started a Kickstarter campaign, which is online right now, where Kickstarter is a great company where you're able to raise money through Kickstarter and people finance it. And it's a great way for tech companies and a lot of record companies, bands are using this right now to be able to produce their own albums and get away from the record system. So how did that all get started?
I would say probably around 2001, Money Mark handed me a 4-track mini disc recorder. It wasn't tape, it wasn't digital, it was mini disc, which didn't get popular here in the States, but I took it home and I started to learn how to record. And one thing that I'm grateful for is my dad, back in the day, started to buy me, recording accessories. And I was like, Dad, why are you buying me a kick drum mic? I don't need this. I play the drums. What am I going to do with a mic? Little did I know that once I got that 4-track recorder, that now I can use that mic. And then I could put it in my kick drum and go, oh, okay, this is for recording. So that's where pretty much the original Bongoloids started. I didn't think of the name then, but, I started recording, and, the ideas kept piling up. And because my dad introduced me to guitar and a little bit of piano, and I actually went to Cal State LA. They had a morning conservatory that I went to and, learned all my theory and stuff like that. So I had all these influences. So I just, would make up my own songs. It was all by ear. It was all, I still can tell you, the notes on the guitar, but I can play the strings and know where, the next one's going to be. But that's pretty much where it all started. So over the years that I've been recording, I've always been performing for many bands, and I was always the guy that people recommended. And anytime somebody came to me and said, hey, I got this project, can you do this? I always said yes. I never said no. I never thought about it and said, wow, I can't really play jazz. I just always dove in, and if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. but I always dove in, and every time I dove in, I always came back up, and, everything I did was appreciated, and it was put on record. Tenacious D was one. I got my first gold record from them for selling, over 500,000 copies. So it was like all these experiences, being around Beck, being around the Foos, being around Rancid, like all these influences, it just started coming out of me, and I started playing guitar, and, my close friends knew that I did that at home, but the world outside, which only knew me as a drummer and a percussionist, didn't know this. So all these years, and even to my dad, like going like, you should put your own record out, again, influencing me and suggesting, things that I, was going to end up doing. He's like, you should put an album out by the time you're 30. I was a little late, but I finally got around to it, only because, being that I was a session musician, traveling musician, that took up my time. So there was never really any time for me to work on my own stuff. And it wasn't until, 2010 when I finally came off tour. And it was actually, I had been on tour for the past maybe like 5 to 6 years, different bands, Morningwood, Tito and Tarantula. And I finally was home. And I had forgotten what it was like to be home and really relax and take care of things around the house. I was like, oh, you know what? I can actually work on my music again. And what sparked it really was I got to be an actor / musician on a CSI episode, which was the 200th episode. It was a CSI Las Vegas. And it was a Santeria scene, like a voodoo scene, like a Cuban voodoo scene. And traditionally they have congueros playing the rhythms, and then they do their ceremony. So the other percussionist was Eric Bobo, who plays percussion with Cypress Hill. So both of us were the musicians, and we ended up also scoring the film with our live percussion. We went into another room. William Friedkin, the director who directed The Exorcist and many other films, was like, oh, we need live drums, and so we went into the forensics part of the studio and recorded live drums, and they spread it out through the whole thing, and we got writing credit. I get royalties from it. I get money in the mail because we performed it and we got our credit for it. But I also met the musical director, and I said, hey, I write music, and here's the whole networking thing: is that you always got to put yourself out there. Nobody's going to know what you do unless you put yourself out there. And, I told him, I was like, hey, I have, a CD of music. What does it take to get, our music on TV? He's like, well, give me a CD. So I gave him a CD, and it was all the songs, I maybe chose 10 songs of all the recordings that I've done, and gave it to him, but they weren't, properly mixed. There's a certain process that you do to get your music just really clean, all the levels even, and I just kind of, whatever I could do on my own, I gave it to him. He listened to it. He's like, wow, this is really cool. But here, listen to this. These are different songs that we use for, the TV shows. Maybe make stuff like this. And that's what sparked it. Said, okay, I'm going to go home right now, listen to this music, and I'm going to make stuff like this. So after I made 3 songs like that, I was like, why am I just going to make it like that? Why don't I just bring my own songs out, and it'll be a mixture? And all my songs were either, I had hip-hop beats, I had punk rock songs, I had slow love songs. I was just all over the map. And I was like, well, I can't really be one genre. I'm pretty much just Fredo, and that's how I've always been. And so I started recording a record with my friend Rick Keeler. He says, I'll do it for you. He did it for free. It was all on our free time. And it's taken a long time. It's about 3 years. Creating this album, recording it. I started the record playing drums. I didn't even write the songs first. I wrote the songs in my head on drums, and then once the drums were good and mixed, then I came and played guitar over it. And that's pretty much, I got about 12 songs, and I was like, okay, well, now that I got 12 songs, okay, the CD's not going to be necessarily just for the CSI guy. Maybe I should make a record for my first record, and so I have 12 songs compiled, and I was like, what am I going to call the project? I was like, I don't really want to be like Fredo Ortiz or Fredo, or I just didn't want to put myself out there like that. I just thought of the weirdest name, and I like the band Devo a lot, and I play bongos. And people would call me and go, "Hey, what are you doing today?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go do this session, play some Bongoloids." And I was like, "Hey, that's a pretty cool name." So that's where Bongoloids got attached. Now, the 3 years later, songs are all recorded. I did the vocals, I did keyboards, bass, guitar, pretty much everything. And my friend was the engineer, recorded it for me, put the mics up, and now I'm at the point where I'm getting it mixed, and I'm getting it mixed by a friend named Robert Carranza, who his credits are all the first two Ozomatli records, Jack Johnson, all of Jack Johnson's hits he's recorded, and so this guy, his resume is just huge, and lucky enough, he's a homie of mine, and I told him, I was like, I don't have any cash, but I need to find somewhere, if not you, to mix this. And he's like, I got your back. He's like, whatever you need. And I was like, well, how much is it going to cost? He's like, don't worry about it. I was like, no, I don't want to hear don't worry about it, because you don't know what that means in the end. You can get a $5,000 bill at the end. Be like, in fact, he charges $1,500 a song, per song, to mix. And I'm giving him 12. And he's going to hook me up. Like, that's just the most amazing thing that I could ever ask for. And so in order, I had someone who was going to invest in the project, and that fell through. So that's why we looked into the Kickstarter. And right now I'm probably about like 5 or 6 days in, and I'm over half funded. So I have till October 4th or 6th to raise $15,000, which is the minimum that I figured out, because this is what a record company would usually do, would be if they liked your band, said, okay, maybe I can make money off this band, I'll give you $40,000, and it'll probably put a couple thousand in your pocket, and the rest will pay for your record. It'll pay for the recording of it, the engineering, the mixing, the mastering, and then the printing of it all, CDs, if you make vinyl, whatever, that's usually what covers it. So I researched online, saw what the cheapest was and saw what the most expensive was, and went in the middle, and came up with $15,000 that I think would take care of it. And with the Kickstarter account, you have 30 days to raise this money. And if you don't raise it within the 30 days, then nobody loses. I don't get the money, but nobody loses their money, and I have to start somewhere else. But, being that we're only, 5, 6 days in, and I'm over half, it's kind of a good sign. And, I'm trying not to jinx it and say, like, oh, we're not going to get there. But it's just like, you never know. And the support that I have, out there, being from old friends like you, to new fans, to Beastie Boy fans, to everybody that's been watching me play, it's just like coming in waves, and it feels really good, to have that support, and for something that I have a passion for, that it's something that I do naturally, and I did go to school for it, but it's more my heart that I give out to the world than what I've learned, what paradiddle I learned, It's like, it goes beyond that. And so, I think we have, I don't even know how many days we have left, but that's pretty much where Bongoloids is at now. And I've been playing a number of shows around LA. I had to get used to playing guitar and singing, because I wrote these songs in the studio, but had never performed like that. And I was like, oh wow, I really got to get used to playing guitar and singing, like. So I had to sit down and, learn that all over again. And I was like, okay, well, what better way than to book a show? So I called my friend, and he has a coffee shop in Pasadena. I said, hey, I want to try playing a show. And I played a show there, and probably about 10 shows later, all got complete songs. I got used to it. I'm singing. People are starting to like the songs. Like, I have people who have favorite songs. They're like, oh, I want that song. I'm like, okay, good. I mean, if you like at least one song, then I'm okay. if you think my whole album's crap, then I got a problem. And with the amazing support of you and MUSE and magazine and everybody, it's just like we're going to push this thing to where hopefully it can be successful in a time where it's hard to become successful right now. You have to work hard. You have to take care of your family. You have to take care of yourself. And you have to live, in a world that's always, showing you that you got to be rich and you got to be this. It's like, no, you got to be happy. You got to be comfortable where you're at with whatever you're doing, And if you have to work hard, to make that paycheck, then work hard, because then that's the reward, because you get to survive and you get to live, and it's sad to see the person who's homeless in the street, but be grateful that you have a job and you're able to take care of yourself and your family, and I'm grateful that music has chosen me to expose it to many other people around the world, where I'm getting people from China, from Russia, from Ireland, from New Zealand, from all over the world going, hey, we want to hear your record too. That's an amazing feeling, and I want to take it to that level. And now that I don't know what the Beastie Boys are going to do. I don't think you can do anything without M.U.S.E, because and M.U.S.E was the one who started that whole thing. That was his brainchild of being a young 14, 15-year-old kid at a punk rock show, watching Black Flag, going, hey, this is really cool. We should start a band. And that's how that started, and to be able to have that experience and have that push and have that, backing and that love, from people who have made it, to the top, and for me to be a part of that, and to be able to use, that networking and that whole, just that love of just being alive and being able to perform and bring your music out to the world. It's a beautiful place to be in, and to come back to somewhere where I was, where in your position, sitting in there, in the Bosco Tech band room, not knowing what you're going to do in your future. You're taking your tech. It's like, okay, I'm going to be a drafting. I'm going to be manufacturing. I'm going to. Most of the guys usually graduated, and did their shop, and then half didn't, because then you're still searching for what you want to do in life, and whatever makes you happy, whatever you don't have to stress about anything, So Bongoloids is out now. We're raising the funds. I have a website, bongoloidz.com, bongoloidz.com. On the Kickstarter.com, you can search for Fredo Ortiz or search Bongoloids. You'll see the link on my Bongoloids page. I have videos, I have pictures, I have all the information you need, all my bio, everything that I've done, in my career, and I have to say, the truth of it is, I'm still surviving, off of playing music, but I'm not rich. I'm not driving a Mercedes, but I'm happy. I'm 3 years married. I'm living in Silver Lake, and I get to do what I love, And I think me doing this album for myself is a way of showing myself, that everything that I've learned from the very beginning, now I'm giving that to the world, and hopefully, I can generate money from that, because now, with the industry the way it is, there's a lot of licensing and TV shows, and you hear your favorite song on a commercial, or and that's where the industry has gone now, is a lot of branding. It's like before it used to be like, oh, don't sell out, oh, you gave your song to Pepsi. It's like, but how are you going to make money? If you want to be a musician, you got to find the different ways to make money, and whether it be the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica on the street, or the House of Blues, or wherever, it's like you're able to do it.
Well, and now let's take some questions from some of the students here at Bosco. See if what they have. Anything for you? Anybody?
You started your tour, your first tour?
I was 20 years old.
And how old were you when you finished?
When I finished everything.
Yeah.
Like I guess, well, to the present, I'm still touring to this day. But specifically the Beastie Boys?
Yeah.
Yeah, the last show we did was in 2009 in Nashville. It was a festival, Bonnaroo Festival, and I think M.U.S.E came out on stage with us and rapped, and I think Fish played, and it was kind of like all these other bands, and it was hot and humid. So that was like 2009. So I've been the tours that I went on with the Beastie Boys. One was it started in '96. I saw them in '98 for Hello Nasty and Intergalactic. 2004 for Check It Out. 2007 was the first time I recorded with the Beastie Boys in the studio, and actually we won a Grammy for that album. It was an instrumental album called The Mix-Up, and we also put out a live show from Madison Square Garden where we had a sold-out show in New York, and that came out on DVD as a movie called Awesome, I Shot That, where they had 50 fans hold cameras and record the whole show, and then they edited all that 50 shots. So yeah, I guess it's been all those years, but still to this day, still playing, still doing my thing.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any classical influences?
Classical, no, but I from all my friends that listen to it, I know Rachmaninoff and Peter Bach, and it's like, and my dad actually has a lot of those albums, but I don't know, I always gravitated to the punk rock. So sometimes I'll put it on the radio, but I couldn't really call any other names out. But yeah, I guess the answer is yeah. Classical influences.
Okay. What would be an advice for somebody who wanted to start a band like you did in high school?
In high school, it would just be to start it, get your friends together. But you need to find the people that are you're gonna gel with, that you're gonna have a good time with, that you're gonna hang out and have a laugh. For me, when we started the punk band, it was just I met my friend. I don't forget where we were at, but he was like, "Hey, I'm starting a band. You want to play drums?" And I had actually not taken my drum set out of my parents' house yet, and it was the first time I actually, I got my license, and I drove all the way to Pomona and set up my drum set. I think we played a Red Hot Chili Pepper song, and it was crazy because it was the first time I started learning other beats, and the first thing we did was fight over food, and right after that, we knew that we wanted to be in a band together because food was our main topic of the day. But definitely finding people that you are creative with, that you don't. It becomes a family almost. It's just all your friends hanging out. For where I'm at now, I have my friends, but drummers. Good drummers are always busy, and the drummers that are available are always kind of lacking something, whether it be versatility and playing different styles. Because in my band, I have a cumbia song, and that's like a Latin rhythm, and I have a drummer right now. He's like, "I don't know that beat." I was like, "Well, we're gonna learn it," and it's things like that, where you're able to teach people, whatever and put it all together, put all the pieces together to make the band. The other thing is kind of like, having like a Radiohead band where it's just like you get a bunch of guys together and see what you come up with, or you can be the sole writer, and be like, "Okay, guys, I got a lot of songs, learn these," you teach them to your friends, but definitely, in high school, definitely keep it, your close friends and whoever you're around. Eventually, by the time you get to college, you can start putting ads out. You can even do it now, but you just never know who you're going to get if you're putting an ad in Guitar Center going, "Looking for a drummer, it should be, 18 to whatever, 16 to whatever years old, must play these types of styles, must know Led Zeppelin, must know, whatever you're feeling."
How often did you practice?
When I was younger, I would always practice. I never timed them, but I probably at least about 1 to 2 hours, and I was just playing to songs. I think I would put Smashing Pumpkins on and play along to it. Try to learn his beats, and but definitely for me it was a little different because I was always playing, so the consistent playing was basically my practice. I was always, I think I never set up my drum set the same every time. It's always different. I'm always changing and I'm always challenging myself. If I have to borrow a drum set and that's already set up, I would just sit down and then try to play however it's set up. That would be my challenge. I think that was more my practice. To really challenge myself and try not to do everything the same. Just change it up every time and be inventive. Create. From on the spot.
Cool.
Anybody else have? Right here.
During when you go on tour, would you play the other instruments like guitar here and there, or just strictly drums?
On tour, it was strictly drums. With the Beastie Boys, even though I said it was a family, I was also a hired gun. I was also a sideman. So I just pretty much had to do what I was hired to do, which was play percussion, and eventually I started playing drums with the Beastie Boys because our old punk rock drummer quit. And since I had experience playing punk rock, they're like, hey, and I was doing all the Latin stuff, and all of a sudden they're like, Fredo, you want to play punk rock? So I was like, sure, I can play it. Went in and I knew the song. So that, I guess, in that sense, I started playing drums, with them as well on tour in front of everybody, where mostly everybody knew me as a percussionist. If we would have like jams at a club later that night after the big concert, they'd probably have like after parties, then I'd go and, somebody was like, oh, play bass, and I'd jam, And I actually just had a jam at my house over the weekend, and I got on the bass, I got on the guitar, I got on the drums, got on the percussion, just to do it, and without, and like I said, I got instruction when I was younger, but I never really dove into the theory that deep. So everything I'm playing is just I'm creating on the spot. So it's just that having that drive to just go and do it, and not be afraid of like picking up a guitar and not knowing what to do. It's just like, all right, just play one string. Who cares? Find the note. Listen for the note. What note are you on? So, but to answer your question on tour, no, I would just play whatever I was hired to do, and that's all I had to do, which was pretty easy because the drums came easy for me, and I would just go do my thing, let out all the energy, and then the next day it would be the same thing, and you go on tour for like 3 to 5 months, and you're either, I started backwards because when you start touring as a young band, sometimes you start in a van, and sleeping in a van for 12 hours isn't that comfortable. But when I started, I was in a tour bus, I was on jet planes, so it was really, really easy for me to just walk up and do what I had to do, But definitely, now that I've started my own band, I know what it's like to put in that hard work, and practice my guitar. So now it's like, now I'm at home going, okay, I better perfect this, because I'm putting myself out there, I'm exposed, I'm on an instrument that I don't know. I know it, but I'm safe behind my drum kit. I can do anything, behind there, but now that I'm in front, I'm like, oh, now you can see me, now you can see what shoes I'm wearing, now you can, it's like, and, but definitely, I'm always willing to try anything. That was my attitude towards music, and all my friends were always like that. Just like, oh, I have bands where we're just like rotate. Okay, now you get on drums, That's a cool thing to do.
Okay, one more question, and then we'll take anything else offline. So,
First of all, I want to say I really like your hair.
Thank you.
Like they know I like to do crazy things on my hair, so
Well, I mean, being a performer, I mean, you see everybody that's out there. You look at The Voice. I was watching The Voice, you know, and
Yeah, I saw.
CeeLo comes out in this white, like, it almost looked like a little skirt, and it was like, but you know.
Well, she's hot, so.
Yeah, it's like you know, you had the image is one thing, you know, and that for being a performer, whether it be an actor or a musician or anybody, it's like you create an image, and this, once I grew my hair, because I used to have hair like you, I used to shave my head,
Yeah.
and it was the easiest thing to do. It was like, I didn't have to worry about my curls, I didn't have to style it, I didn't have to cut it, and shave my head, but the minute I grew this, I started getting recognized, and people were like, oh, you're that drummer, you're this and that, you know, and I'm just like, oh, wow. And now I can't really cut it off because it's become a
Your
staple.
symbol,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's my symbol, you know, and even with the Bongoloids thing, I'm making stickers, and it's just all about this afro, so I'm like, okay, I guess I can't cut my hair anymore.
I mean, it's really impressive to hear all your stories, but one thing that really impressed me the most is that, like, through the process, you keep yourself, like, grounded, like, humble. Like, well, all these things happening, how can you, like, keep yourself down to the earth?
I think surrounding yourself with people who who offer that as well, to be humble and to be grounded and to be, you know, to be real, you know, and it's real easy. I saw how easy it was to be able to act like a rock star or act like, you know, you're a higher being than everybody else, and I don't see that. I see everybody as one, and you know, whether you're famous or not, you're still a human being, you know, and it's exciting sometimes, you know, to have people come up to you and be like, oh, autograph, and you're like, wow, like you really like me, you know, but in the end, you know, I still have to go home, and I still have my friends at home, and that was the most humbling thing for me, is to be able to go and play for 40 to 100,000 people, and then come back and then play in somebody's garage, you know, at my friend's garage, you know, and still be happy, you know, whether it was like high level or low level, and I've just, you know, it's due to my friends, everybody that I've surrounded myself with, you know, and that's kept me that humble.
Like, was the transition hard from, like, playing in the garage to basically the top of the industry to play for the Beastie Boys? So is that a hard transition for you?
It wasn't a hard transition because I guess out of high school and the bands that I was playing with, we were already playing to like 500 people, and we knew what it was to entertain. So I think I got used to it really fast. So by the time I got to the Beastie Boy level, you know, I was always one to just accept my surrounding right away, you know, and adapt yourself to your surrounding. You know, sometimes you can be in a place where you're just like, I don't belong here, you know, and just, you know, be nervous and scared, but it's just like, no, okay, I'm in a place where, you know, I either have to act like them or be myself or just do my job. So I just chose to be myself, do my job, and not act like them.
Thank you very much, Fredo, for coming back home to Bosco.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and I'm, you know, glad to speak to you guys, you know, to people, you know, to you guys who are, you know, either looking to have this as a career or not, or whatever you choose to do, man. It's like, it's the sky's the limit. Whatever you want to do in this world is, you know, it's out there. And if you choose to do music, you know, you can always look me up online, ask me more questions, you know, Bongoloids.com. You can send info@Bongoloids.com, and, you know, if you have any more questions, you know, and any advice. So you guys want to book a show, I'll tell you where all the clubs to book, you know. Say, hey, we want to go on the road. How do you do it? I'll tell you anything you guys want to know.
And just let everybody out there and who watches MUSE, Fredo Ortiz's Bongoloids will be playing at September 26th, I believe it is, at El Cid.
September 27th.
September
Thursday,
27th, El
El
Cid.
Cid. It's a 21 and over show. We're playing around 10:30. And a friend of mine, Benjamin, he's debuting a music video that night, so he asked us to close out the night. So definitely, you know, in having a band, the ball does start rolling as long as you keep it up, you know, and you keep it out there, and you say, okay, I'm gonna, you know, play all the free shows that you can, backyard parties, anything, you know, and that's your exposure, you know, and that's, I mean, No Doubt, you know, started playing backyard parties, and that's how they got their first, you know, big hit. So, and it's possible.
And also on October 13th, you're going to be playing our event, Rockin' for a Cure, an event that we're raising money for breast cancer. On behalf of my mom, who passed away 5 years ago. So thank you very much for being a part of that.
Oh, of course.
Thank you very much for coming back to Bosco. Really glad the students enjoyed it. And we'll see you on the tour.
Cool.
See ya. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.